Hi, everybody. It's Kevin with Pellegrino Walk. Thank you for joining me today for what is now the third episode of The One New Man is Rising. And wow, what a journey already we've been on. And it's not even close to being finished. There is so much to talk about. So many twists and turns and stuff that you're not going to believe along the way. But this one particular aspect that we're going to be talking about today, or at least that we're going to start today, is a dream that Chris Berglund had while in Jerusalem with Lou Engle. This was in about 2007. And it's called The Four Ruths. And you've heard it referred to a number of times on the Lou Engle short. And once again, we're going to get into the Lou Engle short and play that to make sure that we can pinpoint things that he said in this short. And it's really a very small paragraph when you consider the amount of things that he said. But he said so many important things in this little short that are going to lead to everything else. So first things first is understanding the significance of the dream. But before we even get into that, let's review this. I think it's like 30 seconds, this clip or this short from Lou Engle.
There is coming a global movement of the world with anti-Semitism rising. There is coming a mass awakening to the church. And the four Ruths of the nations will say, your people will be my people. And when this begins to happen, it's going to be like life from the dead. The one new man is marching forward.
Okay, that was the Lou Engle short. So there's coming a global movement, a mass awakening, according to Lou Engle. Well, what is this all about? Let's take a closer look at what he actually said. So here we have it. There is coming a global movement of the world with anti-Semitism rising. There is coming a mass awakening to the church. And the four Ruths of the nations will say, your people will be my people. And when this begins to happen, it's going to be like life from the dead. The one new man is marching forward. So note that between what Lou Engle calls a mass awakening of the church and when this begins to happen, it's going to be like life from the dead, is sandwiched this statement or this dream about the four Ruths. And they will say, your people are going to be my people, or your people will be my people. Obviously, a take on what Ruth actually said to Naomi in the book of Ruth. So the significance and what we've been talking about in the last couple of videos is how much Lou Engle has embraced this fighting against anti-Semitism. But the problem is that he is using this kind of the same way as abortion all these years to make a platform to head straight to Israel. But our view of this is that it's a, whether intentional or not, a nefarious move because he's presenting a different Jesus. So awakening is coming to the church, according to Lou Engle, but it's going to happen when the four Ruths of the nations say, your people will be my people. Now let's dig into this a little bit further. So the four Ruths, obviously number one is the Ruth of the Bible, the Gentile Ruth from Moab, who chooses to stay with Naomi and says, I'll follow you everywhere. Your people will be my people. The second Ruth they're referring to in this dream was Ruth Graham, obviously Billy Graham's wife. The third is Ruth Prince, Derek Prince's wife. And the fourth is a name you may not have heard of, but has been very, very influential in the Pentecostal charismatic circuits. This is Ruth Heflin. So, really interesting because Chris Berglund has this dream in 2007. Here's a man that has quite a few dreams, has them all the time, in fact. And he's in Jerusalem with Lou Engle, and he has a dream of four Ruths, or one Ruth calling on the phone, and it's kind of hard to understand, but and I think it morphs a little bit along the way. But what we're going to do right now is get into a Lou Engle video where he actually explains the whole thing and how it happened in Jerusalem, and we're going to play a little bit, and then we're going to pause because this idea of the dream, what I want to do is create a picture here of what they're thinking. This dream is incredibly important to these men. This defines their movement because the four Ruths, when the four Ruths of the nation start saying, your people will be my people, and obviously there'll be a big push against anti-Semitism. Everyone's going to come together according to these folks. And when this happens, it's going to trigger something. It's going to move something forward. So what we want to do is we want to elevate this dream so that you understand that this is very, very important. But then we're going to take a pause, a little parenthesis, and we're going to talk about something else and then come back to this. And it's really, really important. So here's Lou Engle again, talking about the four Ruths.
Hello, brothers and sisters. We really get to the meat of the fast beginning right now. I could look back. It all started in 2007. I was in Jerusalem with my prophetic friend who dreams for me all the time, really for 36 years now. And he had a dream while in Jerusalem. And in this dream, we received a phone call from four Ruths.
We're going to stop it right there. So Chris Berglund has this dream. It is about four Ruths. He was in Jerusalem. And significant things that Lou Engle just said. He said he was in Jerusalem with his prophetic friend, who is Chris Berglund, and we know this because of some of the writings behind this where they actually identify that it was Chris. But a prophetic friend who dreams for him all the time. And now for 36 years, of course, now it's been like 40 something, and he has a dream while he's in Jerusalem. So I think the first thing that we have to look at as we're examining all of this is Chris Berglund. Jesus said, if the tree is bad, the fruit's going to be bad. If the tree is good, the fruit's going to be good. So I think what we need to do is examine the source. And as we do examine this source, we have to understand, and you have to understand as well as believers who maybe haven't been around these men before. But all things Lou Engle and anything that he has really done, I think he would admit this himself, has been because of a dream from Chris Berglund. Chris Berglund has shaped and defined movements in this world based on his dreams. And so he's a very, very important figure. We have certainly put the spotlight on Chris Berglund in the past, and we have shown what his beliefs are. We've shown his manifest sonship that he clearly puts out in the open, even on his website, Ascending Zion. He's never really backed off of that, and he has no reason to because he really does believe it. So we've concentrated on that, but we've never really concentrated on the dreaming part of Chris Berglund. How does it work? What is it all about? How does he get these dreams, and why does he have so many dreams all the time that he's even referred to by Lou Engle as his personal dreamer? And so I started looking into this a little bit, and I started thinking, okay, well, biblically, where do we stand with that? Where do we stand with a guy that's a dreamer? Is this some sort of a prophetic office, so to speak, or is it something that I'm missing? And it was interesting because I did go in, and I haven't done an exhaustive study, but with the sufficient study that I have done, there was a number of dreams in the Bible, significant ones, anywhere from 20 to 30 probably that are listed. And again, it's kind of difficult because some are actually real dreams and then some are visions. And how do you differentiate between the two? But I think the interesting thing that I found out was that a lot of these dreams were concentrated. So there's maybe 10 or so that are in Genesis that are really concentrated at this time when God's forming a people, God's forming a nation and bringing them into a land. There's a lot of dreams around Daniel as well, the end times. Even Nebuchadnezzar had some dreams in there, right? That Daniel ended up interpreting, and so again, concentrated in that time frame right there. Then you have Jesus coming in the New Testament, and so there's dreams there, and there's a few scattered around, but for the most part, they're pretty significant events that are happening when these dreams come. In fact, when angels come, it's not an everyday occurrence. So I think that's number one. That's the main thing that I wanted to say concerning dreams, that they are specific in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they highlight things that are generally highly important events that are about to happen. Now, am I coming against people who dream and who believe that it's from the Lord? I'm not doing that. But what I am doing is certainly making a distinction between something that God could obviously give you in the nighttime. He could give you a dream that might be significant for your life. Um, but I'm talking about big dreams, and I'm talking really about what we're seeing in this greater revival of the latter rain movement that's out there, that seems to have a dream, a prophetic word uh, every 10 minutes, and then from there, that word is interpreted by another one who had a dream or a word, which is then interpreted, and then it's brought together, and then all of a sudden they have direction. And okay, maybe I'm being a little light on this right now, because I do believe that there's an enemy behind this. I do believe that even though I'm kind of making light of it, that there is a direction that these folks are going in, and they are following a spirit, and we are to test the spirits, right? So, with all that being said, who is this dreamer? How does he get them? And why does he get so many? So, I figured I'd play a little clip to start this conversation out.
I want to go somewhere.
Okay.
So Chris is dreaming this Melchizedek order. I don't know. You must have had 100 dreams.
Well, I'm not sure that many, but a lot. On Melchizedek.
On Melchizedek, he gives me a dream, and I shared it last night. That is
Okay, and I'm going to stop it right there because that's really the only point that I wanted to make. Is Lou Engle and Chris Berglund are talking about, obviously, Chris's dreams, but he's talking about Chris is dreaming about this Melchizedek order, which is how they determine their entire theology from Genesis all the way to Revelation. We've talked about this in other videos, but it's all based on dreams. So they're theological interpretations that are then placed in the Bible, on top of the Bible, however you want to do it, are then all based upon dreams that are apparently coming from the Lord. And now on Melchizedek alone, Lou Engle and Chris Berglund are discussing 100 dreams on that alone. This man dreams all the time. In fact, and I'll let Barb talk about this a little bit as we move forward, because I'm going to bring Barb into the conversation on the four Ruths coming up in the next video. But she even had a conversation in her initial conversations with Dean Briggs before she became his editor, um, about this man, Chris Berglund. And Dean had mentioned, hey, if you're wondering about this or that, we have a dreamer. Oh, and I think it was about a friend of hers, a ministry contact, that had been talking about a certain direction in his life, and a very important contact in this scheme of things in the missions world, and he needed some guidance. So she mentioned that to Dean Briggs, and of course he said, well, you know what, we have a dreamer. And my wife was like, a dreamer? Like, what? So, Dreamer of Dreams was not a formal recognized office in the Old Testament, but rather a descriptive phrase for individuals receiving divine revelation, often used interchangeably with prophets, or in some contexts to identify false prophets. For example, Deuteronomy 13, 1 through 5, that we're going to be getting into and unpacking because it does talk about a dreamer of dreams. But again, it's not necessarily an office like a prophet, but the prophets did have dreams. It signaled a means of communication, not a specific ordained governmental or religious position. Therefore, while God used dreams to speak to and through people, Dreamer of Dreams, as you can see Chris Berglund right in front of us, was a functional description of how God communicated, not an established office or title, and especially not a situation where he dreamed for someone. Further, we see no evidence of someone actually having a personal dreamer, except for those in authority wanting to have knowledge of the future from wise men, sorcerers, and magicians. It seems more like that. It seems more like what Pharaoh had. As it stands right now, I would say that Lou Engle considers Chris Berglund to be a prophet, as we will see from the upcoming video clips, even though they call him the celestial man, the dreamer. And what an odd thing for someone to have a personal dreamer that's been with him in covenant for over 40 years now. Chris Berglund has about 100 dreams on just Melchizedek alone. So the question is, are these coming from God? Are these coming from Jesus or the Holy Spirit? And how is this? Is he just singled out in life as a man that God chose to give dreams to? Well, we got to look at another video to really dig in a little bit further and understand where these dreams are actually coming from. Here goes.
For me, I'll hear something that Lou, or I've got some friends that I've really gleaned from.
Okay, so let's stop it right here. And he's talking about imagination, and I want you to watch where he takes this. So again, if we're talking about imagining where we might be in a couple of years or something like that, or we're imagining because we're going on a trip and imagining what it might be like, that's one thing. But it's interesting because he's talking about imagination in a different way, and what I think is actually an occult way. But I'm going to let this progress a little bit, because where Chris goes from here is into taking the concept that he's trying to bring across to this group and then laying that on top of Scripture and interpreting Scripture through that context or that concept. So watch for that, and we'll stop it right at the appropriate time.
Doug Barrett, Dean Briggs, Stephen. I mean, I couldn't keep going on. But what happens, just share with you, for me, if I take a revelation that is hitting my heart and I ponder it, put it in my imagination, the Lord opens that up in the night hours. It's just the way it works. It's like if you're willing.
So he's going to take this concept, put it in his imagination, and the Lord is going to open it up in the nighttime. Well, it's certainly different from anything that I do. In fact, that's certainly different from anything that I read in the Bible of men that got dreams. Usually states that God gave them the dream or the vision. It wasn't necessarily something in my imagination or a thought or a concept throughout the day that I've hidden in my heart, and then I take and place it in my imagination at night. And for God to open that up in the nighttime sounds like something a little different is going on here. Let's let it play out, because he says three words that are very, very important in understanding the four Ruths dream that we've been talking about and understanding this entire movement, because this man whispers, and guys like Bill Johnson writes books about it 4 or 5 years later. He whispers, and movements begin, like the Great Communion Revival with Lou Engle and Dean Briggs. He whispers again, hears a dream supposedly from God about four Ruths, and all of a sudden, the one new man is marching to Israel. I cannot highlight much more the importance of Chris Berglund. This man is the key to a lot of what's going on out there in the greater latter rain NAR big convergence of everything. That's I don't even know what to call it anymore, because it's so intertwined. It's just what it is. So listen to where he goes now.
To allow him. That's why Isaiah 26 says, he will keep you in perfect peace. It's shalom, shalom, if your mind is stayed on him. That word mind is yetzer in the Hebrew. It's the same as dianoia in the Greek. It's if your imagination is stayed on him. You know what it means? Imagination unto conception.
Well, there it is. And he said the three important words. It's imagination unto conception. So I want to take some time out, and this is the parenthesis that I had talked about in the beginning, where we want to stop. We want to definitely have the four Ruths dream in the forefront of your mind as we now delve into how he's getting the dreams, and we look at the fruit of Chris Berglund, the man who's saying he's getting all these dreams. Let's look at his tree. Let's understand exactly what imagination unto conception is. So what is it? Well, it's a form of mysticism, because in mysticism and various spiritual traditions, imagination is considered a spiritual womb, because it acts as a creative, receptive, and fertile space where divine ideas, visions, and potentials are conceived, they're nurtured, and then eventually brought into tangible reality. Imagination unto conception, bringing something into tangible reality. It is described as a, if not the, central support structure of existence, the frame or the spine that connects human consciousness to divine cosmic reality. Man, that sounds quite a bit like imagination unto conception, taking something conceived in a womb and then birthing ideas into actual existence. Imagination serves as a mental workshop, or as we said, the spiritual womb where desires are conceived before becoming tangible reality through focused intention and action. And again, this is in general, not talking about the dreaming part of it, but just talking about in general imagination under conception. By vividly visualizing goals and emotionally engaging with them, one creates a blueprint that directs the subconscious or the subconscious mind and aligns with actions to manifest or be the desired outcome. This spiritual womb that we talked about. Interesting because esoteric Christianity and Gnosticism, of course, we have a video on Chris Berglund called Gnostic Roots, I believe of the Great Communion Revival, again, where we go in even deeper or in a different direction than we're going today. But the womb is viewed as a holy of holies, a prophetic gate. I think those are words we hear today, prophetic gates, where divine creative energy is gestated. It's also interpreted through the lens of Hieros Gamos, a sacred union. And again, this is coming from Gnosticism, sacred union. This manifest sonship latter rain group is constantly talking about union with Christ because it's a blend of Gnosticism. So this sacred union is where the womb, the hidden chamber of creation, actually is. So what's the process on all this? Well, imagination is the workshop and described as a spiritual womb, as we've already talked about, or a divine tool used to visualize possibilities beyond current reality, allowing for the creation of new ideas and scenarios. So again, taking something into your thoughts, visualizing all those possibilities created out of the spiritual womb. That sounds a lot like what Chris Berglund was just talking about. And this process is from the occult. Conception, the impression. This stage involves impressing desired clear and positive images into the subconscious mind, transforming abstract thoughts into concrete mental, emotional, or spiritual blueprints. Well, I think that blueprint word is really interesting because I've seen that somewhere before. And this is where I've seen it. And I haven't watched this. I believe this is just sound and not a video. But once again, the blueprint within Chris Berglund, discovering the glory of Christ already planted in you, transforming abstract thoughts into concrete mental, emotional, or spiritual blueprints. Interesting wording. And of course, the last one in the process, manifestation or the reality. Through sustained, focused faith and action, the imagined concept is brought into physical existence, often referred to as being the thing conceived. Well, isn't this like word of faith, where they talk about rhema words and spoken words, that if we can speak things into existence? And of course, if we've taken on divinity for little gods, as the word of faith people say, then maybe this can be spoken into existence. Maybe Chris Berglund is onto something. Of course, he says it's biblical, it's rhema words, right? But where does that actually come from? Well, it goes back to the New Thought movement, Phineas Quimby, and various other folks who have taken it from there and brought it into our current reality, which we've seen in Robert Schuller back in the 70s and 80s. Of course, Norman Vincent Peale before him, and right straight to our friend Rick Warren. So that's exactly where it came from. It came from the New Thought movement. So the act of vividly visualizing a desired state or object until it manifests into physical reality is fundamentally considered an occult practice. This is why we're warning everyone. This is why we are saying these men are false. We are examining the tree. We are saying that Lou Engle, Dean Briggs, Chris Berglund are false teachers because the fruit of their tree is occult practice. In fact, that may even go down to the root of the tree. But what we're seeing, the dreams and the wild things that come out of this movement, which are the fruits, are really based in the occult. And you could see it clearly from the way he's describing it. It's not like we just go to sleep and get a dream from God. No, we have to actively put it in our imagination and then set it there for later. That's how it works. So it's considered an occult practice, particularly within traditions of practical magic, Hermeticism, and here we go, the New Thought movement. It's often framed as creation from nothing or the creative word. Well, again, how is this like the occult? How do I back up what I'm saying? Well, I want to look at a few things. Some of the occult practices, and you could certainly look these up as well. The secret of creation. In occultism, the imagination is not merely daydreaming. It is a trained, controlled faculty used to produce mental pictures that act as blueprints for physical reality. And again, what Chris Berglund is alluding to up there is exactly this. It's not just a, hey, I'm going to bed at night. It's not just a daydreaming, but it's taking something into your imagination, taking it with you. So, secondly, imagination creates reality. Proponents like Neville Goddard, a mystic from the early 19th century, argue that human imagination is God operating in man. And by assuming the feeling of a wish fulfilled, one forces that state into objective physical reality. Well, how is Chris Berglund getting all these dreams? Hundreds just on Melchizedek. And over the years, I'm sure it's thousands upon thousands of dreams. Occult development. In esoteric or hidden training, the physical body is perceived by clairvoyant vision to be surrounded by imaginations or pictures, which then developed can influence the physical world. And once again, spiritual womb, in this case, the womb of potentiality. Imagination is viewed as the womb or creative center in the mind where thoughts are incubated, very key word, and nurtured until they are born into the physical form. Again, I bolded that word incubated, and I think I'd like to dig into that a little bit before we close. So this imagination unto conception that Chris Berglund is talking about is really that broader view. That idea of, well, I can put anything in my imagination and I can try to make it come into reality. It's basically the secret, right? This is all new thought. Well, let's dig down deeper. And of course, you remember that word that I just spoke, incubation. Well, as you start to look into what this actually is that Chris Berglund does, is something that's not new at all. In fact, it's really, really old, and it's found in many of the ancient cultures like Babylon and Egypt and Greece. But what is it? Well, it's called Dream Incubation, and it is far from a Christian practice. So let's look at dream incubation. Ancient dream incubation roots stretch back over 4,000 years to Sumerian, Babylonian, and Egyptian civilizations, where it was practiced as a sacred ritualistic process to receive divine guidance. Wow, does that sound a lot like an on-staff dreamer for Lou Engle? So this divine guidance, oracles, or even healing. So it was divine in the sense that you could get a message from God, but yet they used it as therapeutic ways of getting healing or receiving some sort of a gift from the gods. This was centered around sleeping in temples or sacred areas known as temple sleep, and this practice was notably prominent in Greek and Roman cultures. An interesting little tidbit here is beyond Greece, it was also practiced by the Hebrews. Eventually became a part of Kabbalah. And Kabbalah, interesting enough, includes practices for dream incubation, known in Jewish tradition as a dream question. But in Kabbalah, they use methods such as fasting, which is a lot like this movement, and prayer and meditation. This will prompt divine messages or allow one to receive guidance from higher realms during sleep. Sounds like there's some Kabbalah influence here as well. But its purpose was not just about sleep, but about active, intentional attempts to bridge the conscious and unconscious mind for solving problems or seeking divine insight. Isn't having a dreamer with you for all these years, 40 some odd years now, seeking divine insight? And isn't it outside of the realm of the Bible? So, some of the common themes across these ancient practices of dream incubation, which sounds a lot like what Chris Berglund's doing, involve sacred precincts and temples, tombs, certain areas, natural formations believed to be connected to the underworld or divine realms, purification, once again, fasting. Fasting is so much a part of this movement. Special diets, ritual baths, and sacrifices to make the soul receptive. Sensory induction. Priests might use miraculous waters or plants or sensory overstimulation to aid the transition into sleep. And of course, we've talked about divination versus therapy. So in the ancients, they would use that to communicate with the divine or receive a message, or in some cases to gain healing for their bodies. However it is done outside of biblical precedent and in the occult. So before we go into the last little video segment of Lou Engle and Chris Berglund, which really wraps this whole video up, I thought it was interesting because as I was searching for this concept of either dream incubation and looking at articles and research on this, I was also looking at imagination under conception. And what's really interesting that if you look for the words and type in the words imagination under conception, the first thing that pops up is this man, Andrew Wommack. And I'll invite you to do this at home as well. Isn't it interesting that, of course, Andrew Wommack out of Woodland Park, what we've been highlighting his movement on the Christian supremacists, that he would be talking about the power of imagination, extreme word of faith, new thought, speaking words into existence. And why not? Because we're gods. Of course we can do that. But I hope we're shining the light on these men and movements that move parallel, but yet together and threaded through each other in all the different ways. It's truly amazing. But speaking of Andrew Wommack, and of course, Barb, my wife, grew up in Woodland Park, Colorado, where Charis Bible School is and where the Andrew Wommack compound is, and that's kind of what I'll call it. But we went to a church service when we were there, which is on his grounds, Charis Bible School, Andrew Wommack Ministries. And the church, I believe, is called Victory Life Church or Center. And we went there to just check out the operation. This was about a year ago. And it's interesting that we found this picture that we took on the wall. That, of course, is Andrew Wommack on the right and Lou Engle on the left. So the idea of Christian supremacy, the idea of dominion, manifest sonship, little gods, all this stuff is absolutely coming together, folks. And we've been saying that this is not Christianity. Now we're really emphasizing that. These men are standing up on stages proclaiming to bring America back to God, while at the same time switching the God. Well, how did they do that? And where did that come from? It's the most amazing, deceptive, insidious sleight of hand that you'd ever want to see. So there's a few things that I want to say before I close this video out. First of all, the anti-Semitism that Lou Engle speaks of and has built a platform on, at least coming against that, both Barb and I would be against that as well, in a far different way. Obviously, we don't want to see what has happened throughout the centuries to Jewish believers or non-believers. We find it egregious what has happened throughout the centuries. With that being said, it's not the fact that they're going to Jerusalem with this message against anti-Semitism. It's the fact that they're going to Jerusalem with a false Jesus who can't save and deceiving the people in Israel under a platform of being against anti-Semitism. I personally find that to be the worst deception imaginable. Let me clearly state this. We started out with this huge dream about the 4 Ruths and about the one new man being able to march forward. But this one new man is not just Jews and Gentiles coming together under Christ. It has a whole host of baggage and things behind it from the latter rain, going back to Gnosticism, going to mysticism, going to Jane Lead, the prophetess Jane Lead. All of these ideas were brought together in the latter rain, in this new revival of the latter rain that we have today is bringing it to Israel. But we cannot emphasize the importance of this dream, and now the importance of understanding where the dream came from. I want to clearly say today that we believe that these dreams that Chris Berglund is having are from the occult and not from God. Therefore, as we look at the tree and we see the supposed fruit that these men are talking about, it's not good fruit. In fact, it's terrible fruit. It's fruit that is bringing a false Christ to Israel. Please watch this last video from Chris Berglund and Lou Engle where they're actually talking. Actually, it's Lou Engle that is telling you exactly how Chris Berglund prepares at night to get these dreams. And this should clear up any doubts that you might have.
I maybe you've heard it, but years ago, I had a dream. A woman walked into the circle of our leaders and said, "Did anybody have a dream last night?" And I said, "No, did you?" And she said, "Yes, I had a dream that Chris Berglund was leading a movement that would touch the whole world." When I pondered the dream afterwards, I was thinking, why is he leading? I'm the leader. But in the dream, she said, and he would build it on 3 words: Celeste, sirens, and Starbucks. What? But it's very clear what the understanding is. The reason he's leading it is because he's the celestial man. He's living in the heavenly realm of revelation. Sometimes you feel like Paul. I like Peter said, Paul says things that I don't even get.
Okay, he's the celestial man, and we've talked about this before on other videos, but definitely in dreamland, right? Getting a whole lot of dreams. And I think it's interesting too, because it's not just about the dreams, but it's about the interpretation. So who makes the interpretation? And dreams are coming from left and right. They have a dream team with this group. So they're getting dreams from all their prophetic people all over the place, and then somebody interprets them. But who interprets them, and what is the interpretation? For example, this dream in particular right here, who determines what it actually means? A lady came up to him and said, Celeste, Starbucks, and something else. And then somebody interprets that. Well, how do they get that interpretation? Once again, some of this I feel like it's making it up as you're going along, but there's some sort of presence behind it. There's some sort of guiding force that's leading this forth, and we would say this is a false Christ. So let me play a little bit more, because what Lou Engle is about to say describes exactly how Chris Berglund is preparing for the dreams.
He's breathing more than words. He's breathing impartation. And if we receive this, we get hungry for more of God. We behold him. It's celestial. Celeste, Siren, and Starbucks is actually a play on Starbucks, the celestial demonic spirit. And then Celeste Sirens. Why sirens? It's because he has dreamed for me for 40 years, and I'm like the mouthpiece. Do you get that? This is astounding how God puts people together, because we can't do it all, and he makes sure that we can't do it all lest we think we're the big guys. God's saying through the dream, buddy, you better recognize the celestial man. I became a siren, and movements take place when I simply tell the dreams. Is that astounding? The real problem is Starbucks. Starbucks is everywhere. There is a DNA of Starbucks. You know what you get. I believe that dream was that Starbucks is the apostolic application to put it on the ground, to build it according to the celestial vision with the prophetic voice that is creating movement. Do you get that? This is why Chris is so valuable to the movement. And I want you to stand, and I want you to open your heart and your mind. And I want him to simply pray. I'm going to ask him to pray. Sir. It would be well worth it to hear how he prepares himself every night to get dreams from God. It's not, well, he just gets dreams. He prepares himself. He's not watching TV after he's not, maybe he does it, I don't know. But he's told me how he prepares himself, and I'm thinking, no wonder heaven comes to him at nighttime.
Okay, well, I don't wonder why he gets these dreams. I don't wonder at all. I can see clearly how he gets these dreams, and they are not from the Lord. This is dream incubation. This is imagination under conception, and I just want to go over Lou Engle's words as we close this out. This entire video where we are looking at the tree of Chris Berglund, where we are looking at the tree of Lou Engle, since he's in covenant with him, and we're looking at the tree of this entire movement, the one new man, the great communion revival, the four roots of the nations that are going to say, your people will be my people. And when that happens, well, the one new man is going to come into fruition and come forward. Scary stuff, folks, as we move forward here. Lou Engle, once again, I want you to stand. I want you to open your heart and your mind. Isn't this what they want us to do? Why are you looking at your Bible? Put your Bibles down, open your heart and your mind, because I want him to simply pray. Wow. And it would be well worth it to hear how he prepares himself every night to get dreams from God. You have to prepare yourself to get dreams from God? Where is that in the Bible? It's not. And though we don't have the exacts on this, apparently, according to Lou Engle, he's told me how he prepares himself. And I'm thinking, no wonder heaven comes to him at nighttime. Heaven comes to Chris Berglund, the celestial man, at nighttime. I beg to differ. It's imagination unto conception. It's mysticism. It's Gnosticism. It's Kabbalah. It's latter rain. It's dream incubation that's been going on for almost 6,000 years now. It goes back to the ancients. It goes back to Babylon, to Egypt, to Greece. All of this has been done before, and there's nothing new under the sun with this movement. But it's all in pretty packages of, well, let's end abortion, or let's get on board with America coming back to God, or let's now go overseas to the epicenter of where everything is about to happen and say, we're against anti-Semitism, so embrace us as we embrace you. Embrace us with a false Christ that cannot save. Well, that's it for today, folks. And join us next time, where we're going to be talking about this dream, this For Ruths dream, the significance of it, but not just the significance of it, because I think in this video, we've dealt with the tree of Chris Berglund, and we've shown you where this is from, that it's from the occult. Now we're going to look at the individuals in the dream itself and examine the dream itself so that we can look more or less at the fruit of the dream or the root of the dream itself. Well, thanks for hanging with me today as we've gone through a lot of stuff, and we're going to continue going through a lot of stuff as we unpack what these men are actually saying, what they actually think, what they actually believe, regardless of what's coming out of their mouths. And there's a huge, huge gap there that we want you to see. So God bless you. Thank you for watching today. See you next time.